Hello viewers, welcome again to another episode of EGIYE's Real Talk, Real Mentors. Today, I'm very excited to introduce Mafruza Khan. Mafruza Appa, she comes with over 30 years of experience across multiple sectors, and we will be learning about her career journey and also asking her some insightful questions. So Appa, thank you so much for making the time to be here. Really excited to have a chat with you.
Thank you, Tania. And first, congratulations. This is really fantastic that you've started this. We all know it's really needed. And the only way to do and go forward is to get it started. So congratulations, and I'm really happy to be here.
Awesome. Thank you. So, right, let's get started. Appa, you have a very long and illustrious career spanning across various industries and sectors, which are sometimes a little hard to define. But perhaps if you can walk us through your journey. And what's very interesting, viewers, is that she started off in Bangladesh, then she was in the US, and then she came back to Bangladesh. So we'll sort of start with that and then go into a bit more detail around that.
Thanks, Tania. So I think you are going a little overboard about my background and experience, but thank you. So as you said, I went to Dhaka University, graduated from here. And as a feminist, my two goals at that point in my life were one, to be financially independent, and two, to both travel and to move out and have a place of my own. So I applied for a job. The salaries at multinational banks were the highest in those days, so I applied for one of those jobs. I got the job and finished my management training in Grindlace Bank, but as my father had predicted, I didn't really enjoy it. So I joined Proshika, which was a cutting-edge NGO at the time. Proshika, Grameen, BRAC were well known, as were some other NGOs of the time. And they were all doing great work, and it was, early years of sort of the development sector. Not completely early years, because we're talking about the late 80s and early 90s. But anyway, it was an eye-opener for me. I knew about the work and the sector and the debates around the role of NGOs, starting from the early days, sort of the political debates around whether it was good for the country, and to use the sort of standard terminology, like whether it would be good for social movements, and Bangladesh had started from a socialist origin, or whether it was actually sort of stunting the potential movements that were organically developing in the country. And that debate, persists to some extent, but it's a different kind of debate now. So, but I will not go into that. Maybe come back to that a bit later. So I did that for, but I also felt there was, at that point, I needed to explore further, and I was lucky enough to get a World Bank scholarship, which was advertised in the daily papers. It was, all print media in those days. And I have always been fascinated by sort of good public education. And the year before, I got a Rotary Group Study Exchange, some kind of award. It's for young professionals that allow you to spend 3 months in a country abroad and give talks about, wherever you're from, the work that you're doing, etc. And I really fell in love with the campus at Berkeley and decided to apply. And anyway, this scholarship came through. So I went to graduate school, and then for personal and other reasons, I realized I was going to stay in the US for a bit longer than I had originally planned. And I also sort of found out that, and this was a realization in Bangladesh, working at Proshika and doing a lot of work actually on reform of multilateral development banks and talking about South-South cooperation, and a lot of work on what is being discussed these days as regenerative agriculture. Proshika was really pioneering in those efforts, as were some other organizations like Ubi League and their efforts in local farming. So I decided to move into sort of the corporate social responsibility, corporate governance kind of work, and I did that for 10 years. First in San Francisco, working for a socially responsible investment company, and then working as an analyst for institutional investors on corporate governance. So after doing that for over 10 years, I decided to move to New York. And again, life is intertwined, so personal decisions and personal circumstances dictate those things. Anyway, I did want to move to New York, and I joined a university-based organization called the Pratt Center for Community Development, which is one of the oldest university-based planning and community development organizations in the US. And it was an exciting time to be there because there was a lot of real estate development going on in New York. And this was also part of, again, the debates between who benefits when you have large-scale, multi-million-dollar projects. And as we know, New York City is a city for real estate and finance. So a lot of stakes. So I got to work on what is now the Barclays Center, which is the second largest arena and the only arena after Madison Square Garden in New York City. And it was a very New York City job, so it was extremely local. And it was very challenging at first because I didn't know New York, I'd never lived there. So just to get to understand the city, how the neighborhoods work, how city politics works, was a big learning curve. Anyway, so I then did that kind of work for some years, again focusing on economic equity issues, social justice issues, and gender parity issues. And a lot of it also, of course, has to do with sort of the way policies and everything is structured, which disadvantages people of color, women, and those are embedded in local and national policies.
Right.
So a lot of work on that. And so then I decided that since I've been on the other side of the table, why not try to find some work in philanthropy where you're sort of giving funds rather than looking for funds. And that's what brought me to Bangladesh again personal circumstances, because my son started university and so I could move, and my parents were getting elderly, so I wanted to be closer to them. And luckily enough, things just worked out that I ended up finding a job with the Dutch Foundation that was going to open an office in Bangladesh. And I came back to Bangladesh after almost 25 years to do that.
Yeah,
and then I've worked in philanthropy and fundraising.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. So, so one thing, viewers, I was not exaggerating. I mean, there's not that many people that get full scholarships from the World Bank. Okay, so I wasn't exaggerating about your prowess. Okay, and the second comment I wanted to say was that I'm sure you were saying that working in New York was so different, and it must have been, right? Because there's Dhaka, which has its own sort of way of working, and then you went from San Francisco, which also has its own sort of like culture and sort of like the way people are and things like that, right? So, and then I guess adjusting to New York would have been a bit of a learning curve.
Definitely. I guess I skipped the part between San Francisco and New York. I was also in Washington, D.C. for 7.5 years. And my son was born there. So I moved to New York when he was 6. Okay. And so he finished school in New York. And actually, he did a year abroad in this part of the world. So that was also when I tested the waters to see if I could actually live here again. Right. So I did do 3 years of independent consulting and came to Bangladesh a few times with some short-term work. But yes, every city is different. I mean, even within the US, San Francisco, Washington D.C. and New York are very different. Dhaka and Chattogram are very different.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Appa, I think a very burning question in my mind is that you worked in Bangladesh some time back, and then you worked overseas, and then you came back to Bangladesh. And what are like the main changes you've seen over this span of time?
So I used to come back every year. So there's some things that you notice every year, and there's some things that you don't really catch. And you know, if you continuously live in a city, if that's your primary base, then that's a different way of watching a city evolve, right?
Yeah.
So I think the first thing that struck me, it was maybe in the mid 90s or maybe 96, that the traffic in Dhaka was feeling different. And then every year it just got worse and worse and worse. But of course, physically and spatially, all of Bangladesh has changed.
Yeah.
Dhaka no longer looks like Dhaka in the 80s
Yeah.
or 70s
Definitely.
or even 90s, right? And even in, sort of established older cities like New York, I mean, that changed before my eyes. I lived there for 12 years when sort of what is called gentrification had already hit New York.
Right.
And now it's just sort of, still at its peak.
Yeah.
That's why you have an affordability crisis.
Yeah.
That's why you have Mayor Zohran Memdani saying what he's saying.
Yeah. Timely, very timely, and needed, right? So, yeah. What about working in Bangladesh? How has that changed? And especially as a woman?
It's very different. Again, younger people dress differently to some extent.
Yeah.
And, there's a shift. I think we all know this. We see more women in religious clothing than we did, in those times.
Yeah.
It's more crowded, but there's also more women at every strata of the economic sort of sphere, right?
Yeah.
From the garments industry, to use the most widely cited example. But we've always had women in agriculture, and even now,
Yeah.
right? And then all the other sort of things that emerge, childcare is a big factor when you have more women working. So everything is different, but again, not everything is the same. So one example I think I'd like to share is sort of the development debate.
Yes.
So I didn't work directly in what is called the development sector in Bangladesh for a long time, but I worked on global stuff also. So it's connected, especially when you're talking about the big debates, what has globalization done for most of the people, who's benefiting, and the whole debate around extreme concentration of wealth and poverty.
Yeah.
So all that, but the core elements, like I said, I feel very fortunate that I worked for a non-government organization like Proshika, which was doing excellent work. But the core development conversations are exactly the same. So that's really, we knew this, but it's still so, it's just sad, and it should make us angry.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? Of course, like there's a larger middle class. Of course, Bangladesh is more affluent, but, everything else. And again, none of this is new. The air we are breathing in Dhaka, it has to do with that hyper, development on hyper steroids, and whether it's the right kind of development, everything. So whether it's how we negotiate our trade policies and agreements to how we do our tax and budgets in the country, and given the political, it's not that things are radically different, but I think what's important now, and again this is very global, is that we have those spaces where we can have active public engagement, like where I as an individual citizen should be able to engage in, tax policy. So it's also about all that. I think there's a little bit of space that we should really utilize now, regardless of which sector we are working in. Because at the end of the day, we know that the whole world is quite crazy now, but it's really precarious in a country like Bangladesh.
Yeah. Appa, I was sort of, as you're talking, I was sort of reflecting on, why I started EGIYE, and one of the key reasons was that this seeing that there's less than 9% of women in leadership positions, it just blew my mind. that how is it in this day and age where more and more women are joining the workforce, but still we're seeing that they're not in as much leadership roles as they should be, right? So what's your thoughts on that, and how do you think we can sort of change that a little bit? It's a huge conversation, and I know we could talk for hours, but just very briefly, if you have any thoughts on that.
And just related to, again, a little factoid, how many years will it take for us to have gender parity, at least between men and women? 132 or 152 years,
okay.
whatever that is. So it's a mix. Again, I think you have to think about what are the quick fixes that are possible, and what are the long-term things that require cultural shifts, right? Because we are in a patriarchal society. I mean, violence against women is a way of life everywhere in the world. Right?
Absolutely.
So again, having really strong deterrence. And then for everything in life, you also need truth and reconciliation, right? So, and we all know this. Maybe this is sort of the new thing in the development debate, that people are talking about men and boys who need to be engaged in this, before. But there is value in gender segregation also. Sometimes it has to do with confidence building for younger girls and women, let's say in sports or something. So it's really a sort of figuring out a mix of things at different levels to further sort of the $1 trillion question. But this is a great start, what you're doing, and you know what I really appreciated when you were talking about it, and you, as you say on social media also, that leadership is not about being the boss. So you can be a leader at any stage in your life.
100%.
Right? And you show up. That's the number one thing.
Showing up.
That's number one. You show up. And then, you, of course, everyone will fail, and, you make mistakes. You'll embarrass yourself. But it's all just part of the experience.
No, I really love that. I think, just being, I think especially also as women, sometimes we get into this mindset of being perfect, and we don't have to be perfect. It's okay to falter, to fail, and all of that, just as long as I feel we keep moving. So Appa, I'm going to ask you that what was one, significant challenge? We all go through many challenges, but what was one significant challenge in your life? It can be a career, it can be anything that you want to talk about, and how you overcame that challenge. And what was your learning from that challenge?
Oh my, that's a $1 billion question. There's so many, and and there's like most of us, there's many things that we're still figuring out. So I think I had difficulty, and I still struggle a little bit with upward management. And I think it was because I was very averse to authority in my younger days. We are who we are, but we recognize these traits in ourselves, and I think that part of me is still evolving. So there's that, and I think just different things. I think it's, sometimes when you fall hard, and a lot of things, your personal circumstances, your professional circumstances, and your personal circumstances could be many things, your parents' health or what have you. So things, and especially for women, things can seem very overwhelming sometimes. So I think, it's important to ask for help, to recognize that, and I think the other lesson is be kinder to yourself, because if you can't be kind to yourself, you're also harsh with other people.
I really like that. So, it's interesting, because I was going to ask you what would be your, guidance or advice for women listening in. But I think from your challenges, you've already sort of mentioned that about being kinder to yourself and all. So I'm going to ask you that, in addition to all of these things that you've said, yeah, what is the one favorite thing that you like doing for yourself? Meaning something personal that you really enjoy doing.
Oh,
I'm changing gears.
yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah.
I like to play sports.
Mhm.
I like to hang out with my friends. I like to eat a good meal, break bread with people I like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to be surrounded by people that you like. And I
Yeah,
think there's a
of course.
lesson in there too,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Because I think sometimes also we kind of get obligated to maybe, you know, hang out with people. that we may
The
not like.
social pressure
The
thing.
social pressure thing. But yeah. So I think that was a really, really good conversation. If there was one tip that you could give to our viewers listening in, I know what my favorite tip of yours is, but I'm not going to say that. But if you can share your favorite tip for our viewers listening in.
But tip about what? About work?
Yeah, let's make it about work. Or it can be in general. Anything, you pick.
Okay.
What's your
think it's-
philosophy that you live by?
I think it's important to try to be happy. There are some people who don't desire that, but for me it's important to at least strive towards that. Life is short. I don't want to be unhappy most of the time.
Yeah. What's happiness to you?
Well, like I said, all these things, it could be anything from, looking at a beautiful sky to, hearing a fantastic live performance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it can be anything, and I think like you said that happiness is what you make of it, right? But it's important to really try and do that, whether it can be through work, your life, or other things too.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
yeah.
I mean, even sitting in Dhaka, which is not a pretty city, you can still find glimpses of beauty,
Yeah.
all around actually.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That was great. Thank you so much, Mafruza Khan, for this really wonderful conversation. I'm Tania Ashraf. I'm the founder of EGIYE. Viewers, I hope that you enjoyed this very, very insightful chat. Please do follow and subscribe and engage with us.
thank you, Tanya. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.